All right, welcome back to another episode of the Picks and Sticks podcast. Of course, this is a podcast where real musicians speak to real people like yourselves. My name is AJ Apollo, again, guitarist for rock band Abiding Conviction.
And my name is Teddy Miller, drummer for Abiding Conviction.
That's right, and we have a very special guest with us today. We brought down our very talented and hardworking promoter, Mr. Chris.
The one and only.
That's it. Chris, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. I can't complain. I'm glad to have you here on the show.
Absolutely. Yep. So before we get taken off too far into this thing, I just want to go ahead and remind everybody that, again, our album Nightcrawler was released about a week ago. It is available for purchase on Amazon.com. You can also purchase the MP3s on iTunes. Singles Good Girl, Rebellion, and Nightcrawler are available for streaming on Amazon Music, Apple Music, and Spotify, just to name a few. And also we have lyric videos on YouTube, along with, obviously, the access to this podcast if you'd like to listen in. So feel free to check all that stuff out. Also want to mention that you can purchase our merchandise through the official Abiding Conviction shop, and that is through Etsy. So feel free to check that out. Pick yourself up a t-shirt or something. Maybe even get that special lady in your life a Nightcrawler shirt.
Yeah, that'd be the best gesture. All right. So let's go ahead and talk Nightcrawler a little bit with the whole table. But Chris, we're going to jump to you in just a second. But for the listeners just tuning in, Nightcrawler is our, as AJ Apollo said, our new album we've released. And we're going to discuss Rebellion today. So make sure you stay tuned into that because we're going to go over that song. Very excellent composition. But before we do so, Chris, how about you tell everyone about yourself?
Well, as you guys know, my name is Christian. I'm the promoter for Abiding Conviction. I'm very happy and excited to promote you guys, and ready to get out there, ready to tear down bars, houses, concert, whatever.
All the above, huh?
All the above. Wherever we go, we're gonna tear that shit down.
That's awesome, man.
Very
I got to
nice.
say, you're doing a hell of a job, man. Our names getting out there, people are interacting, especially through all the platforms that you work on. So yeah, we couldn't be happier with the direction in which you've taken everything. So I think that's huge for us.
Yeah, agreed. And all listeners out there, especially if you guys are trying to do something like what we're doing, don't ever underestimate the power of a promoter itself. Because ever since we've had, Chris here on board, our engagements on everything have just jumped dramatically.
Absolutely.
And that's something that goes a long way in a lot of stuff, especially if you're busy, recording, creating, anything that involves any creation behind your album or whatever it is. So really be sure to get yourself a promoter, but you can't have Chris, just saying.
Absolutely not. You cannot take Chris. And I agree with what you're saying there, Teddy. A lot of bands, when they get in the early stages of forming, they take on everything themselves. Most bands don't have a manager. In fact, a lot of times a member in the band acts as a manager or whatever. But a lot of times those bands are so busy with their creative process that you can lose sight of that if you're focused on too many things at once. So I highly recommend, find somebody that is savvy with social media, that knows it. Like, we're very fortunate that Chris knows the ins and outs of all this stuff. But you want to really find somebody that's able to dedicate that time so you can stay focused on your music and stay focused on the product and the content that you're delivering.
Yes.
You don't want to cut that short because you're worried about, shooting a promo, It's just one of those things I just wanted to throw out there. It's just food for thought.
Food for thought.
Thank you.
I gotcha. And especially along with that too is not just worrying about shooting, but just promoting, putting it out there. It's in the word itself. That takes time. It's a lot of legwork. Yes, there's social media nowadays, but it's a lot of editing, a lot of posting. So just getting somebody dedicated is what you really need.
And Chris, you could probably add into that too. I mean, it's like a full-time job.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, what's your perspective on that? Like, tell the listeners here how that is, or what do you do when you're starting to promote?
Well, when I start to promote, all I do is I just I either share your guys' music or like the shop, the merchandise. I'll share it to every newscast.
Yeah.
Or every bars.
Yeah.
I'll just keep sharing it and also like friends and family and even my coworkers. Every lunch and break I'll share your guys' music and they'll start to like it.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
they love Tone's voice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love Tone's voice too myself. You know, I think that's the way that it goes. I think it really starts off as a word of mouth thing, and the promoter is really where that starts. That's the fuel. You know, if you think of it, you know, like an engine or whatever. You know, that's the fuel. You know, and then the sparks are the band's content, and everything just blows up from there. I think that's really, it's part of a well-oiled machine. The promoter is so key and so important, but a lot of people overlook that, and a lot of people write great content and they just don't have the promotion. So I think that's really cool what you do, Chris. I do. I think that's impressive.
I agree.
Thank you guys.
And another thing, earlier AJ Apollo had just said Tone, and also Chris, our promoter, said the same thing. Tone Martin is our lead singer for Abiding Conviction, if you guys are curious about that.
Yes.
Just wanted to put that out there.
And just since we're mentioning it, of course, the band is, of course, myself and Mr. Teddy, like you said, Tone Martin for vocals, and then we have Miles Milites as our bass guitarist. And then, of course, we got a lot of people behind the scenes, like Mr. Chris here, that help us out and help us really be able to bring the best version of ourselves to our fans and our followers.
Right. And on top of that, Chris, I noticed you said that you show family, friends, etc., basically the album, kind of start with that. What was it you said, AJ, the word of mouth promoting? Yeah. How have the people in your circle responded to the album, to Nightcrawler, to the things that you've showed them specifically, whether it's snippets or it was the singles? How have they responded?
They really enjoy the album. They really do. And the singles, they love the singles. Yeah. They really like Nightcrawler, Good Girl, and Rebellion, and they also like.
Was it Sin? So I believe you told me one of them had said that they really appreciated the feel they get from it, right?
Yeah, they really do.
Tell us a little bit about that feel. It doesn't necessarily have to be about Sin, but just in general, what they feel from Nightcrawler. What is their feeling they get from the album?
Well, they do feel like they're back home, enjoying a good old beer, relaxing,
awesome,
and just enjoying life, or either that or just going night driving.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just having a good time.
Yeah. It definitely, I could see that aura with certain types of atmospheres, if you will, that we've created in some of these songs. I can see where they would feel that. But it is always interesting to hear the feedback from people. Like, you know, I can say for myself, I don't get out enough to talk to a lot of people about that. You know, so it is good. That's really reassuring that you have that relationship with a lot of people in order to share that with us, and I think that's very important.
And I think the cool thing too is the fact that we're getting exactly what we put out. You know, our responses we're getting is what we were looking to establish, to get that happy feel. You know, going out on a drive, you know, cranking these tunes up, especially when you said the night drive, that just painted such a picture for me, and I could easily hear any of our songs from the album when you're playing that. In fact, I've done it myself to where I'm driving to some of the singles or whatever it is on the album, because it does feel good. And I'm somebody who's very particular. It's not just, you know, shameless plug. It's something that I really want to do. When I'm putting on music, there's pretty much a reason to it. You know, I've listened to all styles and stuff, and so there's just times where even if Abiding Conviction is not on my mind, it comes to my mind. And I think that's the greatest thing about being able to promote this. Yeah. Promotion, in order to promote anything, you got to make sure you got something good, right? If it comes to my mind, I feel it's good. And it, as AJ was saying, I really love how that's the feeling that was established with your coworkers, right? They were able to really feel that sense of nostalgia is really what comes to mind, you know, like the old days, you know, or maybe when they were growing up, or whoever influence in their life could be uncles, you know, fathers, mothers, whoever, you know. So that's something I do really appreciate about that.
And I think, the thing is, our band is heavily influenced, as we've talked about in all of our podcasts, and not to be a scratched record here, but our band is heavily influenced in the sounds from 80s classic rock, and that's the thing. We are basically that feel-good party band. The same type of attitude that you had in the 80s. It's a lot of the same mindset. We're just in your modern world. We're something new. We're writing songs that haven't been written. We're doing things a little differently. But that's definitely what we go for. And to hear that people are resonating, that is reassuring that we are doing the right thing.
Very much so. And see, for my listeners out there, that's something you really want to do as well. It's not, make sure you're not in an echo chamber. Excuse me. You want to make, and what that essentially means is, don't be around people who are constantly reciprocating your same message, and they may be saying that out of honesty, or they may be saying that to get on your good side, or maybe they're just, supporting you, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But you need to make sure you're out there, or you're putting yourself out there so you can receive all criticisms.
Honest feedback.
Honest
right?
feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah. So a little bit about that, since we're on honest feedback. Chris, what's your opinion of the album? Now, and when we say honest, we mean 100% honest. We don't
brutally honest.
Yes, we don't like editing things here. We record this podcast like we do our music.
Yeah.
Complete, 100% genuine. So, what is your take on Nightcrawler?
Well, Nightcrawler, it really opened my eyes to all you guys. I mean, you guys really put hard effort onto it. I will watch you play the drums, watch you play the guitar.
Yeah.
Miles with the bass and Tone with the vocals. You guys did really good job on this album. This album is gonna freak people out.
That's awesome, man.
It's gonna go off the charts.
Yeah.
I know for a fact this album's gonna take you guys places.
That's awesome. That's reassuring. I appreciate the kind words, man. I do. And we really did put a lot of work into this thing.
And I also appreciate that as well, because I've known Chris for a while, and he really doesn't put effort into anything that, well, for lack of a better word, let's be honest, that's not worth the time. Yeah. And that's the thing, is the fact that it's worth this time is why we're all pursuing this, Takes dedication, takes a lot of hard work. A lot of us put quite a bit into it.
Yeah.
And it's in our own sections, maybe it's in our own instruments. For a lot of other things, I mean, it's more. I mean, look at AJ, what he does with editing and posting videos and such, and Chris over here promoting. Like, it's. I think the coolest thing about this band's dynamic too is how much communication we have between the members. For example, I talk with AJ a ton, but AJ and Chris communicate and collaborate a lot on topics.
Yeah, we do.
Especially when it comes to promoting. So actually, this is a two-part question that I was very curious about. When you collaborate, how does that go between AJ, you pretty much, being inspired to write everything, versus Chris, you coming in at a new project? How is that dynamic between you when you guys are communicating? How does that get done? Is there something you split up? What are the questions you ask of AJ? Of course, we can take this as slow as we want, but let's give the listeners a little insight of that relationship you guys have.
Okay, so before Chris came along, I was doing my best to promote where I could, without allowing it to interfere with the quality of our music. Now, Chris has been around for a long time already. He's been around for quite a while. But it's like since Nightcrawler, Chris has been given a blessing to just run with it. He's been given total freedom of promotion. He is 100% in control of promotion, and others that get involved in promoting, it's really Chris's call how it goes down. Chris and I, we talk a few times a week, sometimes just to bullshit, other times he'll ask, hey, I've got an idea. I'm just going to go out there and say now, all of his ideas are incredible. There's this guy is like incapable of bad ideas. He has no bad ideas. He'll hit me up and say, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think? And every time I'm like, yes, go with it. But it's really cool because at the same time, though he's kind of running those things by myself or getting my opinion on them, what's exciting for me is I get a little bit of an insight into what's down the road, and because he does have that freedom and he has so much ability to do a lot of cool things for us, and he's very talented at what he does. It's kind of cool to be able to know ahead of time, and get a little bit of an idea of what's down the road. Yeah. So that part of it's really cool for me. But we have a great relationship. We always have, and it's just really awesome to be able to work with such talented people all the time. I
agree. And just real quick on top of that, one of the great ideas that Chris had is live streaming our live performance on April 24th. Yes. So that will be on Instagram. There will also be another live stream on Facebook. We'll give that link to you at a later date, but for Instagram, it's going to be on Abiding Convictions page. So be sure to tune in if you want to check out the show. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys are still distancing since these, during these COVID times. That's fine. Just tune in there, completely free. Just log on, check us out. Yeah. Really be sure to tune in for that live performance. That's something, when it talks about genuine, it doesn't get any better than that, right? And absolutely. Great idea, Chris, on that streaming. That streaming idea. Now, about that, can you fill in a little bit of what you communicate with AJ, whether it was ideas or even just in your words, bullshit sessions, right? Yeah. What is that to you, how you communicate things with AJ? How is that as a promoter?
Well, when AJ gave me the full shebang, as you want to say it, on the page, that idea just popped in my head. Hey, why don't we have a live video, since everyone's social distancing and no one can't go anywhere and no bars are open and nothing's open, so a lot of people who's listening to this on YouTube or on Facebook, can get on Instagram and watch the show.
Yeah, no, it's a genius idea, and for a lot of and just a fun fact for the viewers too, Chris is a huge horror movie buff. I mean, this guy loves all things Michael Myers and all that. And I, too, grew up kind of, digging the horror genre as well. And so, sometimes our conversations, I remember hitting him up one time and just trying to hit him with some trivia, and we've had different conversations. It's not always all business. It's you try to keep things personable between each other, and not make it where it's just like an employee or
boss
something. Yeah, boss employee
and
type thing. Yeah.
That really promotes more creativity when you make things personable. That's why you guys are able to come up with such great ideas between you two. And so, from that, what are some of the things that you have suggested to AJ?
There's one great idea of you going on the zip line.
Yeah,
with your guitar.
He did. Yeah, we were talking. It was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I think the conversation was we had ordered for the next gig. Everybody in our crew we have shirts that we made through our custom shop. Yeah, they can't be purchased. We make them specifically for people that are in our crew, and they have the band's name and a logo on front, and on the back shoulders it says crew. So our sound guy, our road crew, promoter, of course, those people get those shirts. And I was talking to Chris about the shirts, and then we started going with the memes or the GIFs. Send them GIFs. That's what it is, the GIFs. And I looked one up. Of course, I am a huge Van Halen fan, and I found one of Eddie Van Halen swinging on the stage on a zip line, or with the cable, and he's sitting there playing his guitar. And then Chris said, you need to do that at the gig. And I said, man, don't tempt me. I'll fly off the roof on a zip line if I have to.
That is definitely true. I can definitely see you doing that. However, I would have to interject unless it is absolutely safe, because I can't be losing my guitarist.
Yeah, I mean, get me in an arena, man. I'll do it. Throw the harness on me. I'll go,
definitely
do what I got to do.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Throw me in a hamster ball, me drumming,
No.
On 360s all around the band. Yeah, we're ready. We're fully into this thing. And on top of that, Chris, I had another thing to ask you. So, Rebellion. I want to touch just a little bit on it before we go fully into Rebellion itself. What does that song really mean to you?
That song, the Rebellion song, it really means to me it's like a full hard rock kick in the face, kind of a good way.
Yes.
Nice.
You know, you're having a bad day or whatever you're trying to get through the day. Rebellion's right there.
Right, and just rebelling against all the negativity possibly that's in your life at that time. Yeah. Whether it's your job or something even bigger or more heavy. I think I would agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And really, see, before we go too far into the song and structure and such, I like the idea of rebellion just because of the status quo of music nowadays. For example, we talked about it on the last few episodes and such, and it's just going to such a style in which everything's very processed and clean cut, dry, too perfect. We like genuine. We don't auto tune or clip and cut, and just like AJ said, to quote him from our last podcast, if something's done wrong, the way we fix it is we cut it all out and do it again from the top. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about Rebellion is it encapsulates what we're trying to, or what we feel about today's music industry and everything in general when it comes to performing. We want to bring that kind of feeling back. And so I'm going to throw that to you, AJ. Rebellion, without getting too far into the structure of the song, what does that mean to you?
So Rebellion, when Tone and I had started working on the message, if you will, the lyrics and all that stuff, what we were trying to convey was really a story of somebody that's just so full of attitude, and we all have that. It's within all of us. Rebellion speaks to everybody. It's just whether you want to hear it or not, in my opinion. That song is really about, it's a message on life, pretty universal, and speaks on how somebody carries himself in life in general. Right. It's kind of a message saying that, look, I'm gonna be this way until the end of time. I'm not gonna change, and I'm not gonna lighten up. We're in cancel culture, we are. We're in a time right now where things are just out of control. Yeah. This is our way of saying, you know what? Don't care. Yep. We are who we are, and like Tone says in the song, it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. We are who we are. We're not over here trying to, create controversy or drum up some storm. No. Nothing like that. Just average Joes, I'd say, but putting on an above average performance. I think that's what it comes down to. But so many things have just been barred and constricted creativity because of so many rules. We just got to let go of those. Yeah, it's not fun anymore. Right.
Like if you like it, you like it. Don't.
If you don't, you don't. I agree. I very much agree with that, and that's the thing that I think encapsulates this song. The spirit of this song, so to speak, is rebellion. Now, there was something, and stick with me, listeners. Promise there's a method to my madness. There is something I wanted to ask before we start getting into the song structure. Yeah. I'm going to switch over to AJ. So I wanted to play a little game.
Okay.
Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen?
Ooh, you're hitting me with the stuff I hit Tone with on the last podcast. I'm getting a taste of my own medicine. Okay. Hear me out. I started off my journey as a guitar player. I started as a Randy Rhoads fan. I listened to Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. I was a young kid, and I was learning all these licks. I was probably 14 years old and was playing the Crazy Train solo. I looked up to Randy Rhoads pretty heavily when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the catch. My dad is the crazy rock and roller that got me to be the crazy rock and roller I am. It is genetic. Okay. Right. And he had got me. I used to sit down downstairs at my dad's house, and I would sit down there and just play guitar all day long, all the time, listening to whatever he had kind of turned me on to. And he'd given me a Van Halen album. And I listened, and my mind was blown. Just like everybody, it's the same story. You ask the people that were around in 78 and they heard Eruption, and we've all heard the story over and over again. Oh my God, we couldn't figure out what he was doing. Well, when I heard it, we'd already established what he was doing. I came in a different generation. So by the time that I was hearing Eruption and all that, we already knew it was tapping, two-handed tapping and all that stuff. But without going on a tangent, I'm going to say Eddie Van Halen. And the reason I'm going to say Eddie Van Halen is that Eddie Van Halen pioneered a lot of the stuff that Randy Rhoads was doing. Randy Rhoads was taking classical scales, which was different than what Eddie was doing. But, man, without some of those techniques and the things that Eddie Van Halen did, he was a real pioneer of putting it out there, and a lot of those guys borrowed them from him. Yeah. And it's not a secret. It's not controversy. It's a fact. And whether people want to face that fact or not is totally up to them. But Eddie Van Halen is the pioneer, the godfather of rock and roll guitar. I'm going to go with Eddie Van Halen.
Right, and there was a few interviews in which, of course, rest in peace with Eddie Van Halen. But before he had passed, he was talking about that specific topic and saying that I don't lay claim to the fact that I have invented it, but I am the first that I know done it in the way that I did. Right. And I love that statement so much because it's just breeds originality. It takes out it takes out all the controversy. He says that's the way I did it. And that's all we can hope for as musicians, because we're doing everything the way we did it. I guarantee you that there's something, even if it's not heard of in our modern world, of what I've done on the drums, right? I guarantee there is something that has been done in the past, way long ago, maybe even before recording was a thing. Yeah. But they didn't do it like I did. There wasn't a Teddy Miller like me, and that's one of the things that I really locked on to his interview, Eddie Van Halen's interviews. He's really a pioneer. He has that aspect of, I'm not trying to reinvent anything or do something amazing. He's doing what he wants to do. It's his originality, and I think that drives a lot of our inspiration. And your playing, especially AJ, right. Your playing is definitely, you can say it's a nod to Eddie Van Halen, but you are not a copy of Eddie Van Halen. You are not a copy and paste pretty much impersonator. You are your own musician, and the way you talk about structure or structure songs or just compose in of itself is your own style. Yeah. Now, before we get into that, because that's going to be a very interesting topic, Chris, what is your opinion on that? Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen?
I'm gonna have to go with Van Halen too, as well.
Why is that?
Well, like AJ Apollo said, I listened to him too. My mind was blown too when I was a kid. I mean, my dad never showed me rock bands and all that. I just found out myself. I went to do research, and I found a whole bunch of like guitarists and other bands and all that.
It's Chris, and the thing is, not to interrupt you, it's not how you find them. It's just that you found them.
Just the fact you did.
Everybody takes a journey their own way. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a matter that you found these people that are so influential to our culture and so influential to our music that, I get you 100%. And, yeah, I mean, obviously we agree. We see eye to eye on that. Nothing against Randy Rhoads. I think he is phenomenal, and it's an absolute tragedy what happened to Randy. Yeah. Like I said, he's very skilled in his own right, but in that comparison, unfortunately, I got to pick a side. My hands are tied. I got to say Eddie Van Halen. And to touch on something you did say, Ted, too, I wanted to point out, you talked about influence and not being a carbon copy of somebody, but having those influences. I believe that every musician out there has those. How obvious it is up to that musician. Right. They do it in their own way, but here's the thing. What Eddie Van Halen did, I listened to it. Right. When I play with Abiding Conviction, I play a Kramer 1984 guitar into a Marshall stack because that's the way to do it. I use I mastered some of the techniques that both Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen have done, and I use those in my own way. I put my spin on them, again, because they are the right things to play. In my eyes, that's just my opinion, but I just wanted to touch on that.
I love the fact that you did, because that's actually was one of my questions.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your sound. How do you achieve that brown sound, AJ?
Okay, so yeah, I, like many of my peers in music, we all chase that tone. In fact, even like we were talking about Eddie Van Halen, he has said it himself, he's a tone chaser. I am as well. Many of my peers are. I found it, and this is how I found it. Okay, so I use, like I said, I use a Kramer 1984. It's got a Seymour Duncan pickup. That has a lot to do with it, the guitar. Just going to say Kramer knows how to do it, and they do it extremely well. The best guitar I have ever played in my life is a Kramer, and I don't care if you're using a Beretta, a 1984, what it is, Kramer does it right. I'm a huge advocate for Kramer guitars. I use a 1984 model into a Marshall stack. That is how I get the brown sound. And if you're going for a brown sound, that is how you do it. Now, here's the deal. I have adjusted the settings a little bit to my taste. I'm not trying to be a copy of anybody, but the brown sound sounds phenomenal. It's a great sound. It sounds awesome at high volume, low volume, wherever. So then I just played around with it and found AJ Apollo's tone. A lot of it has to do, and the thing is to, like you said earlier about not being a copy of somebody. Look, I couldn't be a copy if I wanted to. I don't have the guy's fingers. I don't have the guy's style. I don't have his technique. I'm, like they say, I am not worthy. I'm doing me, and I do AJ Apollo extremely well. I do nobody else even close to good, but I can do AJ Apollo really, really awesome. Right. So that's what I do. I'm me, and I just stay me.
Yeah.
But my tone does have influence, and I'm glad you asked that, Teddy. Yeah, that's the secret, I guess, to how I get my sound. I recorded the album using a 25-watt head, and I used a Joyo Crunch, I think is the name on it. It's basically a Crunchbox clone. And I used that and ran it in. The album's tone is a little different than my live tone, but again, it
still has that same spirit of what you were looking for.
Same type of sound. It was just what was available to me when we were in the studio doing it. That was the quickest and easiest thing with what I had there. But again, when I'm playing live and everything from here on out, it's a Marshall stack.
Right, best way to do it. Huh?
That's the way to do it.
And before we get into that tone of rebellion, what establishes that aggression that just drives that song the whole time, Chris, what is your take on the sound, especially since you got to sit in here in a full rehearsal and hear that guitar tone for yourself? What to you, without any of the you being experienced or any technical talk, just you and your unfiltered opinion, you just being a spectator, for all the other audience members out there or casual listeners, what did that sound like to you? What did that make you feel? AJ's brown sound.
It got me real pumped, real excited about more songs to come. Like I said, during a concert or whatever, hearing that sound, hearing that brown sound, it just gets you pumped, gets you going, head banging, or just chilling, just chilling right there, just drinking a brewski and enjoying life.
Yeah,
right. It really makes you stop and listen, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of guitar tones today are either very scooped or just the tuning is dropped way low, and that's all fine and dandy, especially when you're trying to achieve a certain style. But the problem with tone in guitar nowadays is just gone.
Yeah.
It's all becoming monotone because you can only have so much dynamic in such a low frequency.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about your sound, AJ, is there's a lot of dynamic, especially from that unfiltered experience. And even if it's someone experienced as you, which is far above my experience, or as experienced as Chris, or is just a casual listener, it was still able to grab all three of our respective experience's attention.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really sticks out to me about your sound, about this Brown sound, but AJ Apollo's sound. It's very versatile. I'd say.
And I want to touch on something too for the listeners that maybe have not been able to discover older bands or where this stuff started. I want to let people know what the Brown sound is, if you don't mind. The Brown sound, essentially, back in the day, they say Eddie Van Halen is the man of the Brown sound. Throughout the 80s with the hair metal and the classic rock movement, a lot of bands were using that kind of sound. It became almost a sound of a generation. Okay, what a Brown sound is. Eddie Van Halen initially was talking about Alex Van Halen's snare drum, and he said Alex's snare drum has that brown sound. It sounds like you're beating on a log. Well, then it got transposed into
interesting.
It got turned around, and they ended up associating it with his guitar tone. It didn't initially start out that way. He never said, I play my guitar and it's the Brown sound. That's not how that happened. But what people are referring to now when we speak Brown sound, modern day and all that, the Brown sound is essentially a Marshall amp, in particular a Marshall Plexi, just hot rodded and driven to hell and back with that dynamic. It's like the speakers are going to blow out of the cabs. Right. That is the Brown sound. And I just want to throw that out there so people understand what it is. If you listen to the old Van Halen albums, the sound that he has that is the Brown sound. And a lot of other bands, like I said, throughout the 80s have utilized the same thing. It's very common in the type of music that we play.
Yeah, and the thing that impresses me most about it, as I said, is just its versatility.
Yeah.
It not only is it so aggressive and still brings the spirit of rock and roll, it also has this aspect of musicality.
Yeah.
It's very musical, and what I mean by musicality is there's different inflections and dynamic tones and such. If he's going lower or if he's palm muting, it's not like it can't fit. That's what I mean by versatile. You can do so many different things and techniques without it starting to sound muddy or having to really edit a lot of it. In fact, I've never seen AJ edit certain parts out of the guitar or add things on it. It's just he runs through it, and it's the easiest thing in the world. Well, of course, not playing, but when it comes to recording and mastering that thing, I mean, he already did all the work, so he just hits record and transfers it, and I think that's the thing I really appreciate about the Brown sound as well. And thank you for telling the listeners about that, because even myself, I like to say I'm pretty versed, but had no idea of that. Yeah. So that's very, very interesting. And on that note, I kind of want to go into something specific on Rebellion. There are this technique that is called dive bombs or dive bombing. Mm-hmm. Can you give the listeners an insight of that, and how does that affect your sound?
Okay, so a dive bomb, again, a blast from the past. A lot of guys in the 80s were using it. It's very, very popular, or was very popular. A dive bomb is essentially on any guitar that has a tremolo system or a whammy bar, whatever you want to call it. You essentially are hitting a note and you're pressing it down to the body of the guitar, and it's dropping the pitch of that note. My Kramer, in fact, all of my guitars have Floyd Rose tremolo systems on them. They're double locking tremolos. So it holds its tune pretty well. Actually, no, it holds its tune extremely well.
Yes.
And, I use it in a lot of stuff. I use it in the dive bombs and the whammy work. I use a lot. My bar gets a workout. I've already had to replace springs. It gets worked out. And I use some other techniques. One of my favorite things that I like to do, and for example, in Rebellion, I start the guitar solo off with a dive bomb, and when I'm coming back up, I'm actually catching a harmonic, and letting that ring out, and that's kind of actually something that I got from Dimebag Darrell. So that's something that he used to do, and I use it. I do. Like I said, I take stuff that I've learned from a lot of my guitar heroes, and I kind of plug them in. But that thing there, it's a dive bomb, and like I said, you catch that harmonic and come up and it just makes the guitar scream, you know.
Right, and you can definitely tell that you're a culmination of the people who inspired you.
Yeah,
and that's what makes you. You're AJ Apollo. No one does AJ Apollo better than you do.
Absolutely.
And that's that. Let me tell you, listeners, that makes every single bit of difference that you can make in any project of whatever you're doing. But speaking of techniques, there's something that's very interesting that I want to go into as well. In the intro of Rebellion, there's this chord progression specifically. Now, I don't know much about it, so I'm going to let my friend AJ Apollo here take over in explaining this. But how in the world, number one, did you come up with that chord progression, and what is your thoughts on playing that thing? Okay,
so again, I'm all about influences and all about things that inspire me. So that chord progression, I actually kind of, when I sat down to demo Rebellion for you guys before we actually got together as a band and made it a thing, I cut a guitar-only demo and played around with the main progression of the song, which was going to be B position, A position, and G position. Mind you, my guitar is tuned differently. But in those positions, and I played around with a form of a B minor type shape and kind of moved around. The intro to Rebellion is inspired by two classic rock songs. AC/DC, For Those About to Rock. Okay. The other one is Ted Nugent, Fred Bear.
Ooh.
So listen to those songs if you want to know what things. And I'm a huge fan of both bands. Love AC/DC. Think the Motor City Madman, Ted Nugent. He's from my home state of Michigan. He's a badass. But it's not a direct anything that's real noticeable. But those are things that inspired me. Music from my past that have inspired me to write something of my own. But those were my inspirations for that. The style of it, and then I just played with shapes. I played with different shapes, using my middle finger and my pinky to change up chord shapes, and just kind of moved it around, and then was basically moving between the B minor shape and an A, kind of like an A7 type shape, and just kind of played around with it until I found something that I really liked. I didn't let theory get in the way, though. I mean, this is after the fact, me explaining what it is, but when I wrote it, I just went with what am I feeling when I think of, you know, of a jam, of a rock song, of something that's going to really have meaning. What comes out? What's, you know, and that's at the time what I was feeling. And then as we got going, I mean, it turned into Rebellion. You know, once the lyrics and all that stuff came to life, the drums, the bass, and the vocals, it became just this huge thing. But when I started off, it was just I was feeling inspired, and that's what came of it.
Yeah, I remember hearing that first round of chord progression, and when I began the writing process for the all the percussion parts, I remember just thinking too, man, this thing just embodies Rebellion. It doesn't seem like it's held on by any theory, as you said. It's just you go out there and do you. I think that was the thing that drove me to create those parts the way it did. And, you know, I accompanied what needed to be done, but at the same time, I was just so free with whatever I did, and that's what gave the whole song kind of that spirit of rebellion, you know, that spirit of being free and doing what you want to do as opposed to what everything or everyone else expects of you, especially in this day and age. And that's what we came out with this rockin' song, you know.
Yeah.
That I like the way you approach that, and my other listeners out there, whether you're just getting started in music or you've been a musician for a long time, don't be afraid to experiment in that respect. You know, you don't have to, especially coming from and this is coming from somebody who's learned music theory, who's basically learned beside many instructors, very strict to, you know, learning music staffs. I mean, I can tell you all day about theory and rhythm and you know, certain time signatures and such. But when you start to allow your world to be taken over by that thought process, your creativity is just sucked from you. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with knowing theory. That it does help you in structure and such, but too much of it pulls the soul out of the song. it really, if you're trying to do something like this or anything really, being genuine, it pulls out that genuine feel because you're so caught up of, oh wait, well that's something that's not really that doesn't fit a scale. Well, guess what? Eddie Van Halen didn't follow scale. Am I correct on that, AJ?
I'm sure he had knowledge of scales, but he really, and the same thing as me. I was going to say the same thing about myself when you were talking about theory. I use like little to none when doing the abiding conviction thing. I legitimately go where the guitar takes me. Eddie Van Halen, I learned that by looking up to Van Halen and
right.
learning the road that was paved by him. That's the attitude to have in rock and roll. Don't
right.
let theory take control of your music. And some people are going to disagree, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree, but I do not let theory dictate what abiding conviction is going to sound like.
Right. And same here. I can do that all day, but it will slow me down. It really does slow down the process. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of rhythms in here or just plain ideas that I come up with that I would be able to not otherwise had it been for me focusing purely on theory. Theory just, sometimes it bogs you down. So you need to step back, take a breath, and just go. Feel it. Feel what you're doing.
Yeah.
Feel what you're playing. Enjoy it, know, because if you don't, that's how you get that sound, is what we were talking about earlier, in which it sounds soulless. Of course, I definitely use theory. I mean, AJ, I think you can see that as well. I've used terminology or even techniques that I brought up that are heavily rooted in music theory itself. Yes. And that's what I would recommend using that tool in, is after you came up with your idea, or we always say the bones of the song.
Correct.
Then you can start structuring. That's when it gets fun. And those people who know of or whatever certain degree of skill you have in theory, you can start using application on that. So start writing some bones, laying the help me out here, I'm an architect. The foundation down.
Foundation, yeah. And then you polish it up.
Then polish it up and improve those things. So I think the thing that I like about Rebellion too is not just the spirit or everything that it's portraying, but there are certain things that complement each other. For example, when you're in those chord progressions, I'm doing the inverse with accents on the toms. So every accent he has on the downbeat, I'm on the upbeat, mirroring exactly what AJ has, and it creates this kind of I guess just this rotational sound to where everyone we've shown is just like, wow.
Yeah,
that is so cool. Wow, the drums are awesome.
Yeah.
The guitar is freaking cool. And it's not the fact that I did something that no other drummer has done. It's the fact that I complimented what AJ has done.
Yeah.
AKA the guitar. So that relationship between the guitar and the drums is very important.
It is.
Allow yourself to breathe and then have fun with it. That's what we did.
Yeah.
From there, that's a hook. That's something that definitely draws attention in.
Once we got as a band and we started making it an abiding conviction song and not just an AJ Apollo demo, it took on a whole new life. Like, it took on a whole different form, and it's not.
Yes.
If I just play that guitar part, it doesn't have the same feel as it does. It's the package. It's everything that comes together is what makes it great.
Miles'
to me.
bass, Tone's voice on top of it, especially.
Yeah. It's the whole package together.
So, Chris, on top of that, what do you think of the band's communication as a whole with Rebellion? Talk about, or to the listeners, describe what that felt like hearing it live today.
Well, the communication was good. I mean, everyone's on good terms. Everyone knows what they're doing. If one messes up, it's all good.
Yeah.
Just start over and do it again. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. I seen a lot of good progress on each and one of you guys, even on the album.
Yeah.
Even on Rebellion, Nightcrawler, every song, you guys work your hearts out.
Nice. And Rebellion, hearing that live, what was that? How did you feel on hearing that versus the album? How was hearing or listening to Rebellion mastered versus Rebellion live? How did that make you feel? Did we do a good job at portraying that same feeling that we're going for?
you guys did an excellent job on
That's
that. I was blown away from hearing it in my earphones to hearing it live.
Yeah. And I got to tell you right now,
Goosebumps.
yeah, I feel the same way. Rebellion, however, just putting it out there, is the most difficult song I play in my entire set. It is such, I mean, it kicks my ass, but I wrote it and I love it and it's my baby and I, try to bring it justice. So it does, and it's great to hear that somebody hearing it, in a live setting has such good feedback, because it is definitely, it is not a novice guitar song at all. It gets simple, but I mean, this song I'm playing rhythm and lead at the same time.
Yeah,
it's
impressive.
I appreciate it, but it is definitely it's the most difficult song in our set list, in our live performance.
And that's one of the things I want to convey to you listeners is most of us guys, it contrary to it, because we're being confident in what we're putting out in our product. That's what you want to do. You don't want to say, oh yeah, I made this thing and it's a little cool. You want to make sure what you're putting out, if you put that passion in it, tell people, say, yeah, this is good. This is really good, and I like what I put out. But my friend AJ, along with myself, we're naturally more humble people.
Yeah,
we're not going to brag. And when I say that it's excellent, I'm speaking to AJ not in a friend, pat on the back sense, just to kind of reinforce his hard work. I'm speaking as a seasoned musician, or someone who is involved in forming musicians, making new musicians. Like I said in the past, I teach from elementary school, from grade 1 all the way to high school, and that's what I'm always looking for, is what makes it sound good. How is it going to sound, or how are they going to sound versus the public? And from his playing, he said it was difficult. He does it great justice. The thing I noticed a lot about teaching students, or anybody, if you're doing anything, whether it's simple or hard, and make it look simple, that means you're doing a pretty good job, an excellent job. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more of that spotlight, AJ. You're doing an excellent job, especially on those chord progressions. Those are not easy. I can tell from the little experience of guitar that I do have.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't be able to go up and play it. I'd need a lot of practice to be able to achieve that. So great job on that. And like you said, it's your baby. You treat it as such. It's something that you're going to continue to improve on and continue to perform, especially when we get out there live, right? Make sure to check us out.
Hell yeah.
That's something that I really appreciate about all of us, is we're grounded musicians that are consistently trying to get better and top ourselves. And that's what you're going to see continuously. But, all this talk of rebellion, so many instances of it, for all of you listeners who haven't heard it yet, how about what do you guys think? Well, how about we give them a listen to some Rebellion?
Absolutely. Let's share the love with everybody.
Yeah.
All right. This is Rebellion by Abiding Conviction.
Here we go.
That was Rebellion by Abiding Conviction. Again, that's one of the singles off the new album Nightcrawler. Don't forget to check that out. You can stream that on your favorite streaming platform, whether it be Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, whatever, you name it, it's probably there. Feel free to stop by Amazon.com or iTunes, and you can purchase the Nightcrawler album in its entirety there. Yeah, well, that's really all we got today. Thank you all for listening in. We appreciate Chris coming by and chatting with us. And until next week, everybody stay rocking and rolling.
Definitely.
On that note, I'm AJ Apollo.
And I'm Teddy Miller.
And we'll catch you next time.